on the Hop YouTube channel or somewhere. People are still dropping in. That's great. So yeah, so Tuesday, Hans built 0.30, and yeah, because we can do whatever we want. We're calling it a beta. We're calling it API stable. So the goal basically is to take 2 months of feature freeze and really hammer out all the last bugs that we already figured out a few bugs. We found a couple, some minor things, some race conditions here or there. Nothing major, nothing blowing up or crashing. I think 0.30 is quite usable at this point. Um, and so it was a good time to do that. It's really not necessary to put everything in the kitchen sink in one night though. There will be a 1.1 and a 1.2 and a 1.3. you know, that's the way things go. Uh, so, yeah, lots of things have been going on. Today I just got off a call with Neo4j Legal, and they were quite impressed with all the things we've done so far. They will also do another review of our incubation proposal. In case you don't, so there is like an incubator proposal document, and actually I'll just copy that in the chat. Uh, these things are quite open, and where is the chat? Uh, go away. Where is the chat here? So all the things that we do are always like quite open, and this is very good. This is very nice. We have nothing to hide. The position that we're in is Kettle has been a little bit lacking of advancements over the past 4 or 5 years, and we're just picking over. We forked the Kettle code base. We refactored most. I don't think there's a single line of code that hasn't been touched. We rewrote the GUI. We wrote a lot of the tools. So yeah, we're in a good position to do this incubation thing. So I'm gonna wait a little bit until my colleagues have had time to go over it. They didn't think it was that there was anything even remotely problematic, but hey. Um, and then in the next week or so, we should push this forward. In the meantime, I'm going to send a mail to all the people in that document. If any of you on the call or anyone out there in the world wants to be part of developing Hop, feel free to leave a comment in the document, and we'll add you if you want that, or if you're in there and you don't want to be in there, just let us know. Um, so yeah, that's that. Let's go quickly over the June roundup. It's been quite the list that we've had, the list of changes. I think, yeah, it's. I think this one was one of the examples of community collaboration in the sense that there were somewhat conflicting ideas about terminologies. Uh, so we kind of had a long discussion on the Mattermost channel to discuss what is exactly a project, what is an environment, and so this is all about lifecycle management, project uh, lifecycle environments. So we changed it a little bit. So Kettle had environments in the past, but they were more like projects as we have them now. They couldn't really be configured independently of the environment that they were in. Welcome, Hiromo. And so this was a whole discussion. around the terminology, the definitions, and I think we came up with something that is quite usable. So now in Hop we have projects like you would have projects in Idea or in Eclipse or so this is a simple project, and the project is located in a certain home folder, and you can set variables specific to the project. And then you can also configure environments separately. And let's take one example where you would say I have like an extra configuration file which sits in the directory above the project home folder, and in there you would set host names, port, usernames specifically for that environment. And so a project would be the same regardless of the environment, and then configured through variables. Right? And you can give it a certain purpose: development, testing, acceptance, CI, common build, whatever. Um, so I think that sort of stuff is working quite nicely. Um, let's go quickly through the list. So yeah, these this graph was contributed by Titart, who was also one of the focal members, along with Uwe. Say, hey, we need to clear this up. We need to hammer it down so that it can be a basis for the future. So now in the future, now that we have this architecture in place, you can imagine plugins that say, I want to compare development and test. I want to see which files are different here in my acceptance environments versus production. You can envision command line tools to push things from development to acceptance and so forth and so forth, right? VFS, Apache VFS is back in the form of plugins. So if we go quickly to the plugin browser, you can see that we have uh, VFS plugins, and so there are two included right now, one for Azure and one for S3. The one for S3 is the easiest. That one is configured automatically if you have VFS configured through environment variables or the usual ways. So the way that you can test this is simply to type S3, hit enter. You should get a list of buckets displayed after a horribly long time, in which Amazon goes looking all the data centers across the world because I was so foolish to have multiple buckets and multiple data centers. Anyway, so then you have all the buckets that I've ever had, um, and this works nicely. Um, so Google Drive was one of the plugins that we also had available, but pulled back because of library conflicts with Apache Beam, which got pushed to the latest version and got cleaned up and is working properly now. The file dialog that I just showed you is something that was needed for Hop Web, because on the web we don't really have a native file browser, so we needed something new. And so the file browser, Control O, has a history. Um, so so it remembers all the things that you browsed for. It has project home. It has your home folder. You can go up. You can create folders with it, or you can create I don't know. Uh, you can create bookmarks. So that way you can just go immediately to the bookmarks. There's also an option to hide and show hidden files, because if you have all the hidden files on Linux, it's just a nightmare. And refresh. So all these things seem to work as intended. At the bottom here, you can actually see extra information about a certain file or folder, whether or not it's readable, writable execution, or if it's a folder or a file, stuff like that. And if there are any, if you type in a URL like does not exist, then you get your error message at the bottom instead of in some annoying pop-up dialog, right? Just to smooth things out a little bit. Okay, so quite happy with that one. Git, the basics are working, but I do think that uh, it still needs a little bit of work. It was a port from Hiromu's work, Spoon Git. I do think that we can improve this a little bit, but yeah, that's something that we can do in the next couple of months. Polish it, give it more tests, and it should be good to go. Web maybe Hiromu can give an update on that. Do you feel like it? Uh,
Yeah, I can give you some quick updates. So basically,
sure.
I have done creating a patch, like a porting WebSpoon onto Project Hop. So creating a patch on top of Hop is basically done. What I'm working recently is a single sourcing. Single sourcing is like
Hmm.
merging this patch into the main master branch of Project Hop so that you can build a desktop client and also a web client from a single source of source code.
Yeah, yeah.
So always desktop client and web client are always the same. So it's easier to maintain and yeah, and it takes time.
So I think the next step maybe to create like a that Docker folder that you have, and maybe create a separate module in the main project hub, so that or is that already done?
Docker folder isn't a big really issue, but
No.
you have to split the UI subfolder
Yeah.
into like a web folder and also desktop folder, like a desktop
Yeah.
fragment and also web fragment.
Yeah. Yeah. We can do that. I think. Uh, so that's I think something where Hans can help and with the modules and the build procedures. I think maybe we need to publish an extra library there, like you said, and split it up into fragments.
Yeah,
Uh,
so
but yeah, I
that's
think we're on a
pretty
on a
much
on a on a
yeah
great path, right?
yeah that's pretty much work in progress, and I have to carefully split the main UI module into those two fragments. I mean, it takes time, but yeah, it's really taking a better shape.
Yeah.
Yep.
If it helps you in any way, so I've added like a couple of environment variables. Um, so so if you look in the script, you can see so in Hop script, and these variables are called like the Hop platform runtime and Hop platform OS. So the idea is to have some way of figuring out in the code
Mm.
with what tool we're running, right? Because you can say I'm running on Linux, but it's if you just use uname minus s and you run on Linux, you could still run web hop on Linux or in a Docker container, or so it makes sense to say, okay, let's be explicit, right? We're running the GUI, we're running the configuration tool, we're running, so that we know what we're running, because that information is quite cheap because we're running the tools ourselves.
Mhm.
So it could be envisioned that we actually, to make your life easier, Hiromu, is that we have a few simple if-then statements in there. So if we're running the full GUI or if we're running the web, then we have just this different path in the code. Obviously, it would be nicer if we could split it up in interfaces and stuff like that, right?
Now
But
I will take a look at those environment variables if it is easier for me,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
It's just a couple of if thens. It's not the end of the world, right?
no.
um, so yeah, let's continue. Let me share my screen again. So exciting stuff. And there's somebody. Welcome, Brandon. So I'm also quite happy with the search perspective. It's something that I've been um, yeah, I've been frustrated with for a long time. So if you hit the Control F button, or just think it's find here, or go to the search perspective here on the left hand side, you can see that you have now different locations, and there's a way to say, okay, let's add more locations if you have. As for example, suppose that you have built a plugin that stores everything in a search engine somewhere. It doesn't matter which one. Then you can add that as well in the future. But right now, it's a very optimistic thing where you say, okay, I'm looking for a host name, and so it will find that um, that string case insensitive. Uh, but if you look for a host name case sensitive, um, it will find it in various places, right? And also, it will search all the pipelines and workflows in the whole project because that's the project that we looked for. It will also look for it in like in this case. If you then double click on it, it will say, okay, so this comes from the environment actually. This is one of the configuration files. So we'll say, okay, not only will it find it and open the editor for the variable, but also select which line it is, because obviously if you have a whole bunch of them, it's harder to figure out. And if you click on you know the specific transform or action, it will open that transform, open the file, and then open the transform or action uh, to make it easier to at least figure. Because sometimes you have like 100 transforms in one pipeline, and then yeah, which one is it? I know which pipeline it is, but which transform is it, right? So quite happy with find. In the code, there's a bunch of search providers, and there's actually even like a search analyzer plugin now where you can say, okay, I'm going to provide another analyzer for the various plugins. Um, so for the metastore objects, for example, the database meta, uh, let's say that we have a Git plugin, and we have a Git project, and we want to be able to search the Git project as well. We could add like a Git project search analyzer, which would then say, okay, I know how to search that object and report back on the results. All right. Let's go back here. And yeah, the preview tab is gone at the bottom, as you can see. And so while we're running, um, let's say, like this, if you send some data to a Kafka topic, Kafka is also one of the transforms. Kafka consumer and producer is one of the transforms that I added a couple of weeks ago. So now you can click on this thing, and it will show you where it left off, right? And the way that I've made this work is by integrating it into the local pipeline execution engine. And so now you can say, okay, I want to sample the last rows continuously in a running pipeline, and I want to keep the last 100 rows. And so this makes it very convenient to see the last rows, but also, before I forget to mention, 100 random rows. And random uses reservoir sampling to pick random rows from a stream of data. So it's very convenient. Now you just have to you just click on two transforms, and you can basically see what's going on in that logic, right? The output of that. I found this to be working better than going to a tab at the bottom and then clicking on a step again. So this is more direct. It's more like immediate results. You don't have to wait. There's another option like the sniff test, which but in this case I'm only sending 10 rows per second, and so now you have to wait 10 seconds before you get the results. So this way of caching the data and making it ready immediately for consumption is a better way of doing things, I think. But obviously, feedback is more than welcome. Just let us know how you like that. Yeah, and another major change, I think we mentioned this last time, is that the Metastore is LGPL licensed actually. So this just was an oversight. Metastore GitHub. So if you go to the Pental Metastore library, the code base, it doesn't really have a license file, but if you go into the source code, you will see that it's actually LGPL licensed. And the reason for that is because simply it was an oversight, right? They forgot to change the headers. Yeah, long time ago, 5-6 years ago, they forgot to change the code from LGPL to Apache when the rest of Kettle did that. But for us, it's an issue. We didn't really want to bang on Pentao's door or Hitachi's door to change this, so we just said maybe this is an opportunity to improve stuff. And so if I now go into my Hop5 folder, you will see that there's like a metadata folder instead of a Metastore folder. Instead of the names of these objects, we now have a key without spaces in lowercase, relational databases, hop servers, and for example, the pipeline run configuration that I just said, it's JSON now. So I think it's easier on the eyes, more compact, easy to check into Git, see the differences. So quite happy with this as well. So you don't need to jump through hoops to change this, right? All right. These metadata, the hop metadata, is also pluggable. Before it was always like a little bit iffy. How do I add new things? So now the metadata plugin has all the plugins here that you see, and the annotation is also simple hop metadata and a simple interface, making it easy for the GUI to see, okay, which kind of metadata do I have available? I just ask the plugin repository, and I know. And so for those things that we want to expose, we can actually do that through user interface. And this has led to obviously the metadata explorer, making it easy to see, okay, these are the object types that we have available, and here are the manageable objects. Let's take another one. Let's shut this down first. Okay. Oops. Maybe someone with a Neo4j connection. So you can just click on this and edit that metadata straight away. I think this one, these old menus, they're like an oversight. They can go away. I think it's just too cumbersome to do edit metadata. Neo4j connection demo. Yeah, that's one of these errors, and this is just easier. Like for me, this works better. Yeah, and I think most of the kettle steps that we had, I think they're done. I created like a kettle versus a hop differential, and I'll link that one as well in the, so you can have a look at that and give feedback on that. I think you should be able to do this. But basically, the changes that we've made are we're getting quite a list, right? So not just the terminology that we changed, but also the way that we configure things, the way that there are still different features now. Unit testing, Apache Beam, so that was never part of Kettle. It was always like part of the Neo4j remix that I had. Is just plugins, right? And so I've tried to come up with um this set of differences. And there are also still two things that we haven't done yet. Two notable things. I think Bart was still working on metadata injection, but I can help with that as well. And subtransformations, the mappings. I'm not sure that many people use this, but I think the simple mapping step, porting that one should be quite easy to do. So that's on my task list to get that into 1.0. Um, so yeah, so these are the sort of differences that I try to highlight with this quick differential. Feel free to add comments. I think I've set this up so that anyone on the internet with this link can comment. So feel free to do so, and I'll update it accordingly. Okay. So yeah, Brandon and Uwe contributed videos. It's on our YouTube channel. I think Brandon set the standard with a getting started video. It's really awesome. You should take a look at it if you have the time. So yeah, now that we have 0.30, please help us out with bug fixes and testing and testing. The more bugs that we see pop up on in the Jira, the better. Uh, Also, feel free to help us out with documentation. Um, so, just in case you don't know, all of this is checked into GitHub, right? And so HopDoc is, in this case, this is my fork of HopDoc. Um, so the things that you see on the website, so getting started, uh, these parts are reflected in the in the GitHub project. So you can have these pages, so documentation about Hop GUI, Hop Run, and concepts and stuff like that. Um, they can be edited, and then you just simply do a pull request against the Hop Doc project, and then we have new documentation. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is simply to use the edit this page button. I think it's at the bottom of every page. You can just say edit this page, and then you get dropped straight into the gory details. So if you see like I don't know, let's take user manual, the transforms, it's the abort plugin. If you have an extra screenshot to share or extra stuff that you want to add, you can do that, right? Uh, I think we're in a pretty good shape, but I think the biggest task list that I have given myself in the next couple of weeks is to write a SDK, sort of like a development. I think it's Jira 550. I think, come on. Yeah, so a hop development guide with API overview, integration, development. Sort of like the Kettle SDK that I once wrote. where we show you how to execute from Java code a pipeline, how to inject data into it, how to get data back out. What are the basic things that you need to do to bootstrap this? How can I develop my own plugin, my own transform, my own action, my own whatever? So I think that will be very useful. And I invite you then to test that, right? All right. So yeah, that's pretty much what we've had. Also, one of the things that I've done is implement RAT. So Polymer XML. So Apache RAT. Um, Apache RAT is like this. Um, it checks whether or not all the files that you have in the project have the appropriate licensing header, like the Apache public license header, and it runs all sorts of checks to see that there's no all of a sudden LGPL or GPL header in there that might cause concern. And so this is a target that we can run now. I'm not sure that Hans is already doing that, but we can then run this and systematically make sure that the code stays clean and that all the things that we check into GitHub are actually files with the appropriate license header. Yeah, that's pretty much where I've been. I think, Dieter, you guys also worked on the Docker container. Maybe you can give us an update on that?
Sure, yeah. So since the environment setup came so nicely along, of course that had to be reflected as well.
Yeah.
On the container side of things. So I integrated this, also adjusted all the tests that come with it. Not so relevant for any end users, but it's always good if we have some tests attached to the containers. In general, it would be great if we get some feedback on the containers.
Okay.
So if some of you have played with it, and I expect there to be shortcomings at the current state, if you could please just file a ticket or whatever it's called on GitHub, create the case, and then we can look into it and make things better.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, it has full environment support. Now, actually, by default, it expects you to use the new environment support.
All right, cool. So yeah, give that a shot if you can. And I think the same goes for Uwe's import tool. He's also looking for feedback. So if you have any kettle projects that you want to migrate or give it a try, he has created the UIT, the Ultimate Import Tool. I was only joking when I said to call it the Ultimate Import Tool. Hop import would have been perfectly fine. But yeah, so Hop UIT is documented somewhere on the web. Let me just share my screen quickly. I think I have no idea where to find that.
I think it's in the technical documentation.
Yeah. So so I think the Hop Ultimate Import Tool. Yeah, this means that the search works really well, Hans. Thanks a lot. I don't know how you did it, but let's say this beats everything that I've seen from the Pentao help site. So I think that Uber also added support for projects and environments. Uh, so, so it would be great to test that out to see how that works and to give him feedback as well about the things that work and don't. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what I've had. Um, so Hans, you had some cool update as well on the. I think we tested it last night. The Mattermost has like this call option now. It's what kind of thing that is that using? Jitsi.
So yeah,
So Jitsi is a way for us to communicate and whatever. I think we've also added like a voting thing. So if you have anything to vote for, if you want an opinion, there's like a way to vote on stuff. Um, I think the next biggest step for us, I think it's all looking fairly good, is to crack down on the final bugs, is to go through Jira a couple more times and to get most of the things out of the way. There's been a few people like Brandon who reported on flickering. Giancarlo, my colleague, reported stuff. So usually these things are very easy to fix. Um, um, I've been using these variables to say, okay, if we're running on Windows, then we need to be aware of flickering. Um Apparently, this problem doesn't show up on Linux or in the web front end or anywhere else. But it's a need for double buffering. It's the first draw on an image, and then the Windows API is fast enough to do this without flickering. Anyway, so those things, keep them coming. It's more than it's really a lot of fun to see these things, these small bugs, and say, oh yeah, that's annoying. I looked over that, and once it's fixed, all of a sudden things are moving a lot easier. I think Brandon, you had this file safe kind of thing, right? So if you have a safe as, and then you can type a file name here. Let me just. Am I still sharing? No. Yeah, one last time. So it's one of these annoying things that you just need to make time for. So if you save this as another file, um, it now remembers what that file name. You can just type something in, right? My file. Hit enter, and then it's saved. Before you had to kind of guess the extension, you kind of had to figure out how to do it, and now it's just save as. Type something in, hit enter, and it's saved. There you go. And file open is the same thing. So, but it's these. It doesn't matter that it's not a big ticket item. Anything small is welcome. And I would even dare to say that in a lot of cases, these small annoyances they're more important to fix because they get in the way of your day-to-day work, and they just need to go away. Uh, Something is zoomed incorrectly and all that stuff needs to go away. Anyway, I think I've did enough talking. Any updates from you, Hans, or Bart, or anyone else?
So in addition to what Diethard already said, we also have I added the link in the chat. We also have a Docker Hub repository now, so you can just pull the current snapshot version or our 0.30 release. This is not the webhop container. It's just a documentation is included. It's just to run transformation pipelines or start a Docker server. As Brandon noticed, and I will add this as soon as possible, a latest tag is also a good option. So you also have the latest, you can just pull the latest stable version instead of a specific version. I think that's about it from My side.
So yeah, it looks like we're making this happen. Quite exciting, actually. I'm happy also to see this came up. Hiromo asked about it. That yeah, there's a lot of excitement in my company in Neo4j. Um, but I've even I think in general I think it would have been a waste to let the whole kettle code base kind of go the way of the dodo. I think we managed to revive this code base, refresh it, polish it up. Um, as a side note, I am passionate about these small GUI annoyances. Already created a case for every time that you see like check boxes or buttons in general mispositioned. Feel free to create Jira cases to your liking. Any kind of like um bad GUI, bad dialogue, misalignment things. We went from a very old version of SWT to a very recent one, and not every dialogue has survived this unscathed, unfortunately. And for people like myself who live on 4K displays, high resolution, high DPIs, things tend to misalign a lot easier. So if you're in that scenario, also if you're running on a Mac or on, yeah, well, I think in the past, Kettle has not always run nicely on Macs. Make sure to, yeah, every time something doesn't work the way you want it, we have added ways of handling shortcuts for keyboards and stuff differently on Mac. But if needed, we will add more, right? I can't hear you, Brandon. Sorry, man. No, really sorry. I'll just type it in.
You can ask in the chat, Brandon.
Okay, so environments. The term environment is now a shortcut for project lifecycle environment. And one more time, let me share on my screen. So if you Wikipedia lifecycle environment. So the system lifecycle, system development lifecycle, I think goes through certain phases, and you can have environments in them, right? So development environment, common build, user acceptance, testing, production. So we took that terminology because it's sort of like standardized. And so if you go through the Roundup, June, I think, oof, that didn't come up. So I think Diethart's schema is correct. So a project can have its own metadata and unit tests and whatever data sets. But once you go beyond that project, you want to say, well, I configured my database connection with $host name, but that $host name needs to have a different value for development, acceptance, test, production, CI. And it needs to live in a different folder. And so you need to be able to say, okay, I have one or more configuration files. Because it came up that maybe you have one configuration file, but maybe you have a whole bunch of projects and you want to have a general configuration file for 10 projects. We all have point to the same server, so you don't want to redefine these things. And so this is how it came to be that if you have a an environment, it points to a project. So I have a project hop for development. Well, actually, just hop 4 should be, right? I think the hop 5 is. In any case, so what you have is this ability to have one or more extra JSON files, so you can add more, just create them, and that will allow you to be as flexible as possible with your configuration. And interestingly, all these things are also supported on the command line. So if you have, let's say, hop config, so now you can have like configuration files that you can point to, and then you can set or describe variables in them. These are not just variables; they're described variables. Every entry has a name, a value, and a description. Because obviously there are no descriptions in JSON. There's no comments. So that makes it easier to see what's going on. What we also have, config, hop config is now the new config file. So these are all these described variables. So I think this makes it easier to see what's going on. And you can add your own variables to those. These are like system variables. And the project configurations are in here. And then the lifecycle environments are referencing these projects. So quite simple in structure, but very flexible, and allowing you to check these JSON config files. This is one of DTART's requirements, which is totally logical. You want to check these into GitHub as well, into Git somewhere, so that you can just go to development server and do a pull and have the latest configuration. Or if you want to have, if you have a CI configuration or something like that, it's very flexible to do this. And with the configuration, with Hop Config command line tool, you can then, your Docker containers and your scripts, wherever, you can just change these things to your liking on the fly. Yeah. Okay. You have any more questions around that? What is the effect of defining an environment for a project? Well, it's just adding an extra configuration file, basically, right? One or more extra configuration files, so that you can specify the variables that are specific for that environment, not to the project, but for the environment. And then you can keep everything that is, the same for the project. You can keep it common. All right. I'm looking to have my database connections point to def. Yeah, so if you have a database connection, you can just configure it using variables. You would have one RDBMS database connection with $host name, and then you just define that host name in the environment configuration file, and then you're good to go. That's all there is to it. Yeah, it's become quite a lot easier. And for hop run, wrong folder. So hop run used to be like convoluted. It had a lot of options, but yeah. So all the runtime configuration options, they're now pushed into the run configuration itself, like executing on a slave server. Well, that's a remote execution engine, pipeline engine. We no longer have kitchen and pan. We'll figure out which one it is automatically by looking at the file. Now you can just specify the environment, and all the configuration files will be picked up automatically, or the project. there's still a lot of people that just don't want to have an environment, just want to have a project for a proof of concept or whatever, right? But at least now you have the option to say, okay, I have a project. Now I want to upgrade it to a life cycle project, and yeah, that's what's going on. Simplified a lot, right? I think it's simple is good. I think in the past, a lot of these things have, were maybe a little bit too complicated. All right. Any other questions? Well, in that case, people, thank you.
Do you have any
Yeah.
update on the Apache incubation process, or it's already covered?
No, no. I started talking about this at the very beginning, but so I pasted a link to the incubation proposal. It's the first link at the very top. So if you have any feedback on it, feel free to do that. So we're doing a final review of this. In the next couple of days, I will send an email to everybody on the list to say, hey, this is our intention of pushing this forward in the next week or so. And I will also inform our champion and our mentors, Maximilian, Julian, and Tom. And see if Tom still wants to join in, because he kind of like pulled back from. He was frustrated with the bureaucracy, he said. But yeah, maybe they can find us another mentor in that case, right? And so then it's just a question. I checked this with Maximilian. It's just a question of sending the proposal to the mailing list, the Apache mailing list for these things, the incubation at apache.org or something. And then you get a vote, basically a discussion on a mailing list about, hey, what are you doing? Did you think of this? Did you think of that? Anything that might not have been covered in the proposal. But I think we pretty much covered our bases, right? I've also, amended the document to say that, okay, it's not just a kettle fork that we're doing, right? So we started from kettle, but we've added a lot of external code. It's kind of like a merger of different code sets now, plus a lot of refactoring. Like I said in the beginning, I don't think there's a single line of code that hasn't been touched in some way. It's been pretty substantial, the stuff that we've did in the end. So yeah, I think that all that is looking good. I don't see any roadblocks. Yeah, the people from my company, from Neo4j, I had a talk with them earlier today. The legal guys, and they were interested. They find these things fascinating. But once they heard, yeah, it's all Apache license, they were like, oh yeah, that's copyleft software. There's no real risk involved, right? That's so yeah, they said they were going to look at it as well. So if any of you have any feedback, but I think it's looking good so far. In the beginning, this document was all about kettle, but in that year that we've actually worked on this, yeah, most of the things that we're doing are not kettle anymore. They're hop things, like all these projects, lifecycle environments. These are things that belong to our vision for the future of this project. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. I'm looking forward to starting the incubation. According to Max, there weren't any real roadblocks anymore, and I've heard that they said, like, okay, so if we're already running RAD, if we're already doing all the things that they're asking, then the incubation process itself will go really smooth. And they said then in 3 months you could be a top level project if all goes well. So let's hope for that. Let's say in 6 months we want to be a top level Apache project. Sounds like a nifty goal, right? Uh,
Well,
seems doable. Um, in the meantime, I'm also working to advocate for Hop outside of these documents. So I did a talk proposal on Hop for the Apache Beam Summit, the virtual Apache Beam Summit in August. That was accepted. Next week, I'm doing like a tryout because they're using some web conferencing software I haven't heard of yet to see if my screen sharing works and stuff like that. But yeah, that's going to be cool to talk about how easy it is to use Hop to develop pipelines and push them, run them on data flow. So I might. So if any of you have an easy way to stand up a Spark cluster in Google or AWS or somewhere, let me know if there's any cool scripts or something. Then I can test with Spark and Flink. I'll run locally in a Docker container. But I really want to demo these three platforms. Um, I think with Hop Remote Execution Engine, it's easy to say I want to execute this pipeline remotely on that server, and then we run a small Hop server on that Spark master, and then on the Spark master, it will do the Spark submit basically of a Apache Beam pipeline, and it will start it up. And the cool thing is, I will report the metrics to your Spoon application, to your web application, whether it's Hop Web or Hop GUI, whatever. It will show the metrics and update through the remote execution engine. So those are the sorts of cool things that I want to demo, because I think these environments, Spark, Flink to a certain extent, they're quite um, involved. If you want to see what's going on really in the nodes, and it's far from trivial always to see, especially if you're running on Hadoop clusters and stuff like that. It's hard to get real metrics on the various operations that you're running, and this could be like a really cool way of developing these things. Anyway, so that's something coming up in the next month or so in August. Uh, I don't know when the virtual in a few weeks, I think. Um, so yeah, all looking good. I'm also doing a talk proposal, obviously in the Neo4j online developers summit, Nodes it's called. So it's an online conference that we did last year. I think we had 5,000 registrations then, 5,000 viewers, participants. So it's pretty big. I think we're probably going to have more attendees this year because of COVID, and I think people are getting more used to doing virtual conferences. So I'm also submitting a proposal for Hop and Neo4j development with Hop, and Rodrigo is also going to do one session there. So we'll keep pushing and spreading the good word. And yeah,
talking about virtual conferences,
yeah.
we still have a lot to plan out, but we're talking about, or thinking, at least thinking about doing a virtual HCM20. So the continuation of KCM19 last year. And we're still thinking about the right formula, the platform to use. But the idea is to have a conference in October, November, around the same time last year, but virtual, of course. But that's, I mean, if that's something we're working on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point, Bart. So if you have any ideas, we're looking for a solution for conferencing software. I don't expect we'll have like 1,000 people joining, but yeah, once you go over a certain amount, it's you can't go beyond having decent web conferencing software to kind of like yeah, put it all, schedule it all, prepare it. I don't know. It's a lot of work to just do that. It seems almost like more work than doing it in real life. Yeah, so that's what that was about it for us, I think. Unless there are people that want to, so give it a try and let us know how things go. Yeah, and thanks for joining this hangout. I'm gonna stop the recording now.